Alright everybody, welcome to the regular business meeting of June 20th, 2017. And as always, we like to start by acknowledging that we're on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. So I have a mover for adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so next up on the agenda, are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Any last minute delegations or proclamations in the room? Seeing none, we'll move on. Now this section of the agenda is for consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So if there's somebody here who's not on the agenda and has an urgent matter, please come up to the mic and let us know and we can see if we have it on the agenda for you to speak. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. So we have a timed item that we're going to start out with, which is item number 7, staff reports from Community Planning and Infrastructure. And this is a development permit variance for development permit number 443 at 1365 Victoria Street. And so for this one, the proponent and the members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting the following requested variances to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw. First section is section 41.2, location of parking facilities. Proposal to increase the maximum number of parking spaces that may be paid for in lieu from 4 commercial parking spaces to 12 commercial parking spaces. Secondly, section 42.4, off-street loading. Proposal to reduce the required number of off-street loading spaces from 1 to 0. So after I've confirmed that it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. And just to note that we'll ask you to limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. And so keep that all in mind, and before we do get to that section of this evening, we will entertain a presentation from our staff on the proposed variances. So I'll turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Acting Mayor Blackman-Wolf and Council. My name is Elaine Naseby. I'm a planner with Development Services. Tonight I'm bringing forward development permit application number 443. It's located at 1365 Victoria Street in downtown Squamish, and this DP includes 2 variances. So 1365 Victoria Street is located in the downtown commercial core. It's zoned C4, as are all the surrounding properties. The site is a corner lot fronting 2nd Avenue and Victoria Street, with a lane providing access directly to the east, so it has 3 frontages. It's currently a vacant lot, and it used to be an annex.
Sorry, the lights went off.
Sorry, we'll get this sorted out here so everybody can see.
There we go.
There we go. Now you know what it looks like when we're not here.
Cheers.
And the after hours time. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
So it's currently a vacant lot. It used to be an annex to the Chieftain Hotel, but was destroyed by a fire some time ago. The site is adjacent to a commercial office building to the north, and the Chieftain Hotel with the Naughty Burl nightclub directly to the east across the lane. So the proposed development is a mixed-use commercial, office, and residential development. It is 6 stories. There's 3 commercial units proposed at grade, as well as 3 office spaces on the 2nd level. So altogether, those commercial spaces total 600 square meters, or 6,500 square feet. There are 32 residential apartments proposed for the top 4 stories. And while the applicant has indicated that this will be a rental building, no housing agreement will be entered into and registered on title. Therefore, there are no assurances that the units will be rented long-term. The primary residential lobby entrance is on Victoria Street with a canopy and facade feature, And the secondary residential exit stair lobby is located on 2nd Avenue. So the form and character, this site is located in the official community plans development permit area 2. Some of the key features of the building are that it steps back at the 3rd story along 2nd Avenue. It has a curved edge at the corner of 2nd and Victoria. The primary exterior cladding material is a corrugated metal siding in a brown color. There is a fairly extensive overhead canopy. The 6th story is articulated. In terms of landscape, there is a 3rd level plantings in planter boxes that will provide a green edge along that frontage. And there is a wood bench identified on plans at grade at the corner of the building under a building overhang. This is an image of the site plan showing the layout at grade. This shows that there are 2 entries to parking, so one to the at-grade 1st level parking. There's a separate entry to the 2nd level, and both of them are off of the side lane. The streetscape will be required to be upgraded to planter beds, street trees, and street lights per the subdivision and development control bylaws downtown streetscape standards. There is a challenge installing trees in the streetscape on 2nd Avenue due to a narrow sidewalk and overhead lines. And so also there was discussion with the applicant about providing a greater setback on 2nd Avenue. However, there are challenges fitting in the commercial component as well as the required parking. So this shows us the parking at grade and on the 2nd level. So it's enclosed enclosed parking. There are also 3 parking spaces at grade along the lane. So all residential units per the zoning bylaw have 1 parking space. So there's 32 residential spaces, and that includes 2 accessible spaces. In addition, there are 2 motorcycle spaces, and all required bike parking is being provided. So the proposal largely conforms to the C4 zone, with the exception of 2 variances. So the first is that in this location, per the zoning bylaw, the applicant can pay for 4 required commercial stalls. They can pay for them in lieu to be provided off-site. So the variance requested is to increase that amount by 8 stalls. So a variance of an additional 8 stalls, so that in total 12 spaces would be paid off-site. Also to reduce the number of off-street commercial loading spaces from 1 to 0. And just for context, that 300-meter square meter area, floor area, is the requirement for a loading bay. So under that number, no loading bay is required. And so there is just under 300 square meters at grade, so that does not require a loading stall. And so it's the 2nd floor that's requiring this loading bay. It's possible that a loading space could be painted on Victoria Street in front of the residential lobby, and staff need to determine a bit further whether this is feasible. There is some precedent for this in the Artisan building on Main Street. It has a loading stall out front. So staff recognizes that there is limited parking downtown. So it's, there's also this district priority of creating employment space downtown. And so providing this 2nd level commercial space results in a higher parking requirement than it would be if it was built as residential. And as I mentioned, also the building's loading stall is also being required because of this 2nd level commercial that is being provided. And so there's no bylaw requiring 2nd level commercial space, but it is a district priority to increase the commercial provision downtown. And there is a bylaw that is currently having council readings that would actually require buildings to have commercial space at the second level. So it is a challenge to accommodate both the additional commercial space as well as the resulting required parking. In addition to this, this site is located half a block off of Cleveland, and in our zoning bylaw we have a provision that all properties on Cleveland do not have a maximum number of pay cash in lieu stalls. So if this property was located just half a block away, they wouldn't be requesting this variance because they could pay for all 12 stalls in lieu. So in terms of innovative parking solutions for the requested parking variance, first off, staff would like to stress that if council does wish to construct a parking structure downtown, that all the cash in lieu funds that we've already collected and much more are required to build that. The $6,000 value that the district collects for that cash in lieu is considered low, both in terms of the cost to build parking elsewhere as well as what other municipalities charge. So the staff recommendation, however, would be to consider using the $72,000 that would be provided in lieu to initiate a car share program in Squamish. And so this is something that staff is already looking into, and the sustainability coordinator will be bringing forward a report to council in fall of 2017 looking at the feasibility of car shares. And just in a very initial research, it does appear that because we're outside of Metro Vancouver, Squamish would need to pay like a startup fee, and it does seem to be in the range of what this project would be providing as a cash in lieu value. Alternately, the applicant has also proposed as an alternative solution that they pay $54,000 cash in lieu and put the remaining $18,000 that would make up that 72 into 3 electric vehicle charging receptacles within the building's parking. And so the rationale from that is that also stems from the higher requirement from the commercial spaces that are required for that commercial second level. In terms of engineering and streetscape, there is a water main upgrade that will be required, and that's the applicant's responsibility. Per our bylaw, frontage upgrades will be required on all of the frontages, and cash in lieu will be required for undergrounding those hydro lines that can't be put underground at this time because it's such a short segment. Development permit 443 was presented to ADP on May 4th, 2017. The minutes were attached to the council report. The committee supported the project but had recommendations for the applicant and staff to resolve. So this resulted in the building stepping back at the 3rd story, an increased extent of the pedestrian canopy overhang, moving both of the accessible stalls to address safety concerns that there had been in a previous iteration, and adding landscape to the 3rd story along 2nd Avenue, providing a green edge to the building. ADP had made comments recommending a green roof. And so this is the building, the application, the evolution of the application, I guess. So on the left, that's what it looked like when it went to ADP, and then the final one is what staff is bringing forward to council tonight. In terms of OCP policy, there is policy supporting the mixed use and the increased residential density in our downtown core. In terms of public comments, a public information meeting was not required to be held as we had 2 requests for one. Notices were sent to property owners and tenants within 100 meters, as well as the Downtown Business Improvement Association. So 2 public concerns were noted. We received 1 letter from a local business owner with concerns about the parking variance. So they cited concern about lack of parking in the immediate neighborhood, with the Cornerstone building, the parking provided at the Cornerstone, the removal of the lane when Stan Clark Park was redeveloped, and parallel parking replaced angled parking on 2nd Avenue in front of the park. They also cited a heightened need for accessible parking specific to their business. They asked where will in lieu spaces be located and when will they be built. Concern that the one stall per residential unit requirement that we have in our zoning bylaw might be too low. And also a concern that that $6,000 cash in lieu value is too low. Separately, we received a noise concern, so essentially from an adjacent residential unit. This was a telephone call, and that's why it was not included in the package. And so they said that there was currently a lot of noise that they were experiencing from that existing nightclub. So staff comment on that is that this is a DP application, not a rezoning, and so requests for covenants should be linked with the variances being sought, and in this case they relate to parking and loading, and that downtown is a mixed-use area, basically where businesses are allowed in a lot of different areas and they might start up or shut down, and it's hard to mitigate that noise in every location. So the recommendation that was in the council report is that council approve development permit 443, subject to registration of a flood covenant on title, the provision of the $72,000 cash in lieu in place of providing 12 commercial parking spaces. And staff has, since the council report was circulated, has suggested that that wording might be revised to say, and that the first priority for this cash in lieu amount be considered to initiate a car share program. And the provision of the on-site landscape bond, which is in the value of $70,000. And also that the that variances be included, which would vary the number of pay in lieu stalls permitted from 4 to 12, and also that one off-street loading space be varied to 0 off-street loading spaces. The alternate staff recommendation would be to refer it back to staff. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So what we'll do as a starting out amongst council here is entertain questions that you have, mostly for staff, and then also things that you're concerned about, and allow the applicants to sort of note that mentally and come up after our first round to give their presentation. So, Councilor Kent.
I didn't hear in the presentation about approximate apartment size. Are these 1, 2, 3 bedroom?
Acting Mayor Blackman-Wolf, through you. I believe they are 1 and 2 bedroom units. They are a bit smaller, and we could actually ask the architect or applicants are here to clarify that.
Yeah,
If you
it'd be
wish.
helpful because I tend to agree. I think that 1 space per unit is a bit tight, to say the least.
Councilor Rice.
Thank you. There's a picture in the report of the step back at the 3rd floor. I take it is on 2nd Avenue. And is it also on the north side of the building as well, from the property line? There is no overhead. Yeah, one of the pictures, one of the schematics, not an overhead like that, but seemed to show balconies on the north side. And so,
I think the one that had the before and after might be the one Councilor Rice is thinking about. Yeah.
no, that just shows the one corner. So it's on the opposite side of the building. Anyway, my question was, this is sort of the same discussion we had a week ago about the setback from the property line for the residential units. And the picture that I'm referring to is on page 12 of the paper report.
So you're wondering about the setback to the unit to the north?
Yeah, if you look at that picture, it looks like the Victoria Street, Victoria Street side is to the property line, right from ground to the 6th floor. The back, there's a setback from the lane. The front, the 2nd Avenue side is set back. And so the side I was wondering about is the north side, which in this picture appears to have balconies, and so I'm assuming it's set back in, I'm guessing 1.5 meters, which is the minimum. Similar to the project we saw last week.
Yes.
It would be, okay. That was my question, thank you.
My preference, seeing that the storage for each unit is actually on the floor where the units are.
Through you, Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf, can you please repeat that? I didn't hear the question.
This storage for each unit is on the same floor,
That's correct.
so it's not all in the parquet.
Yeah.
What I couldn't see on the plans, is there a bike wash incorporated somewhere?
We don't believe there's not a requirement for bike wash.
Oh.
And it's not, I don't believe it's included in the proposal.
And I suppose we can't protect the rental because this is not a rezoning, it's a DP, so that would have had to go in place at the rezoning.
Yes. We have had those discussions with the applicants regarding the noise covenant and the rental covenant, and because it is not a rezoning, this is where we're at.
Another question, on the loading zone, if you did put it on Victoria Street, ostensibly, we're getting no commercial parking in the building, but then we would be taking away a parking spot on the street, which is challenging, to say the least.
Yeah.
So are you thinking that that would be a timed loading zone, like between the hours of 7 to 9 a.m. or later in the day, so that it was free during? So they'd have to time deliveries for certain hours, so that during the day it was free for people to park there. So is that something we could?
That sounds like a really great idea. I'm not sure how we would secure that, so we'd have to think about that. Yeah.
Essentially, would be within our streetscapes. It would be up to the district to determine what the best use for that space is, and we're working with the engineering department to see if there's any potential to have that shared use there.
Another question, one of the proposals was to use some of the money to do electric plugins. But to me, where those are needed are in the community, not in private buildings. So would it be that same cost to put 3 in the community, or is it different because it's going in a building?
I believe that would be higher if we were putting them on the street because there's more infrastructure requirements. Whereas in the building, it's getting built right now, so it would probably be less. The applicant has suggested that the cost of putting them in the building would be similar to the cash delivery stall, which is $6,000. But we could use that money if council wishes to do the electric charging on the street.
Yeah, more.
Councilor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you. It's a nice looking building, that one. The ADP, one of the questions there is 100% of the car parking are all small cars. I don't know, was that addressed? Small car parking spots?
Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf, through you, that's true. The zoning bylaw requires, allows that all stalls in the downtown core can be small car stalls. I'll just mention that our one of our ADP architect members has highlighted that the dimensions in our zoning bylaw for small car stalls are not as small as in Vancouver. Like they're only maybe 6 inches shorter than a regular stall in Vancouver or something.
And on the covered sidewalks, looking at the plan, and I know it's hard to tell looking at the plan, but it's covered from property line right around corner to property line.
Not quite. Let's have a look here. So on that image on the right there, the level 2 parking, that shows you the extent of the canopy. What you don't, so there are a few gaps there, and then if you look on the corner, the second level does overlap the first story. So it is fairly continuous.
Well, I don't understand those little gaps. I guess that's my question. Why would you cover the sidewalk and leave 8 little gaps for the snow to come through?
Could we ask the architect?
Yes, we'll put that on the list for the architect.
Okay, and then, you know, in reading the report, and I always like supporting what staff say, you know, you guys do all this work and look at these buildings, and parking's a real quandary for me, you know, for the long time, because we're putting out a lot of big buildings with always wanting variances, and we've got a really poor, in my opinion, parking count per unit anyway. And I know it's, in the industry, it's almost, well, I shouldn't say laughable, but I know that what we charge for parking stalls in other communities is, I was just trying to look up another town to see what it is, but we don't charge very much for our parking stalls. And so it kind of baffles me when, you know, I always go straight to staff recommendation. That's where I start on these, see where you guys see it. So it's staff recommend we, you know, but then I heard you say something right at the end there, that staff's ultimate recommendation would be for us to send it back to you.
No, I think that was the alternate recommendation,
It's not
is
good
if we're
enough.
not satisfied with.
Was that the alternate recommendation?
That was the alternate.
Oh, because I thought, oh, there's hope.
There's always hope, Councillor Bragg.
Yeah, well, I thought when I heard you say that, I thought that maybe you were gonna address some of this, but it's still in staff's opinion that this is a good to go the way it is project. That's staff's opinion, knowing what we know about parking and knowing what we know in the downtown and all that kind of stuff.
If I may, we have these competing priorities, parking and employment space downtown. And having gone through, or we're in the process of looking at, you know, what is the best solution for this core area where we want more employment space. Downtown, we've done community engagement. We're going to be bringing the results back in July to council and recommending options. But the more we're looking at it, the more we're realizing that it is a real challenge for developments on smaller sites, and especially on corner lots, which is this lot, because you're wrapping the commercial space around, so you're not getting that side parking that you would get in a mid-block property. And the fact that we have this provision on Cleveland Avenue where we allow all of the cash in lieu for commercial parking, you know, we're treating not just Cleveland but these other C4 properties as if they are our commercial core. So I think it's only fair to apply the same standard. And I think that one of the recommendations that will come out of the downtown study will be to look at parking for that additional commercial space. So we know it's an issue, but it's a competing priority, and we'll have to apply, I think, variable approaches to different size properties and properties that are in different locations, such as corner lots.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I do kind of understand densify and get lots of people down there and hubs will happen and all that kind of stuff. So could council say, well, that's great, but we want the same money that North Vancouver charges for stalls, or we want the same money that Richmond charges for parking stalls?
So
And start beef up our.
I can answer that. What we would need to do is we would need to move the alternate recommendation to have staff go back and work with the applicant. So unlike, say, a rezoning where we're at different levels and stages where we can actually put in very specific conditions, on a variance, it's either yes or no, and the no version is go back to staff and figure out something else.
One thing, if I may, to note is that the municipalities that do have these higher amounts those amounts are based on the parking structure or whatever the initiative that is required to collect those money. So we are in the process right now of determining what a parking structure would cost, downtown, but the money doesn't have to necessarily go to a parking structure. It could go to a car share or active transportation, but those amounts need to be set on something. So it would be difficult for us to look at another municipality and just pick a number because it has to be rationalized.
So, I know when council talks about parking structures, like we are doing, that we go, well, between 30 and 40,000 a parking stall. I mean, that's when we're discussing, okay, we have to find a piece of land, we have to build a parking structure. It's gonna be between 30 and 40,000 per parking stall. And so that's what we're gauging our numbers on. And then, you know, the right hand over here is saying, well, we're charged 6,000 a parking stall. And the left hand is saying, well, we're gonna have to round up 40,000 a parking stall. And, you know, I mean, I don't mind, I like your idea of the density and the height, and I like the looks of the building, but I just think we should be getting, I mean, I just think we should be collecting enough money for what we're gonna need. And if there's a way that we can do that, I'm happy to do that. You know, and I know it's extra money to everybody and everyone's gonna cringe, but I'm just worried when the crunch comes and we have to start looking to build something, we're not gonna have the money. That's my opinion.
So I have Councilor Elliott, but I'll just jump in here, just because we mentioned other jurisdictions and sort of the way that I see it is that what we're trying to do is, you know, one option is to say, okay, well, we assume that the parking demand is going to be the exact same for every unit, no matter where it's located in Squamish, and cap out that number of spaces, build structures, and do that kind of thing. Or we can say, well, there are other tools depending on the area where we can reduce that need. And so, for example, in Vancouver, the idea is that, you know, for every 5 spaces and exemptions you get, if you have 1 car share, you can eliminate 5, or, you know, things like that, getting to that kind of formula. So when I see this, I see that we're getting close to that, almost enough for two car shares and taking away 12 spaces. So just to put that in people's thought process, but I had some very specific questions around the alleyway surface parking. Is that intended to be residential, or is it visitor residential, or neither, or something else?
Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf, it's, those are included in the 32 residential stall count.
Okay.
So
they would
there's
be-
no requirement for residential visitor parking in this location.
Okay, so that kind of answers my second question, which was when we were talking about loading, I thought, oh, that might be a natural place to put a loading space. And again, too, right, you can do what we were talking about earlier, you know, loading parking during the day, visitor parking in the evening for guests of people who are visiting. And then my other question, which was sort of answered before, but I want to throw it out there as an idea that overall in downtown, we've heard from people that there's more of a demand for on-street accessible parking spaces. And so I would like to see, you know, I think it'd be a good idea in this kind of scenario that, you know, we have incorporated with our streetscape improvements 2 new stalls, you know, 1 on each side. And I'll get into the reasons why later, but we're sticking it to questions, so Councilor Elliott.
I guess my last question is, and this is to, you know, the complexity of trying to meet all these different priorities in the downtown core, at different size lots. And so, in this case, we're sacrificing the commercial parking. But if you sacrificed a floor of residential, you'd have 8 spots. And then you could do cash and lieu for the 4 that you're missing. So did that conversation come up? Like, I know everyone's trying to build the 6 stories, but, you know.
If I may, certainly, we've looked at that. We've also realized that this is a development permit, and that the other option is to eliminate the commercial space on the 2nd floor and put more parking in, and put maybe an additional few units of residential. So there's that balance that in the position that we're in, if we want to get the commercial, there's little leverage that we have on this type of an application.
All right, so I'll invite anybody who wants to come up and speak from the audience. If the applicant wants to come up, architect, I know we had a couple of very specific questions that maybe they might want to address, council.
Council, apologies for the lights earlier on. I'm Andreas Quincy, the architect on the project from AKA. So if there are any specific questions that you'd like to have answered.
I think there was the one about
Well,
the
just the size
gaps
of
and
the
the
parking.
overhang.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And the canopy over the sidewalk.
Yeah, so the canopy over the sidewalk, it's, it's pretty typical to have some spaces in between for a couple of reasons. I mean, if you're walking downtown, between individual businesses, you've got a little bit of space that you don't really notice all that much. But the reason for that is because the canopies are always over the sidewalk, and they're over a right of way, and we need to be able to remove those canopies if there's, if the district needs to do any work in the services or with the sidewalk or whatever. And having discrete units to be able to unbolt them and take them off is a lot easier than having a continuous thing that's would be a lot harder to dismount. So basically, I mean, that's really the main reason for it.
So just through the planning on Third Avenue, the development that went in 60 units, didn't they go continual overhang? All down that, wasn't there a continual sidewalk coverage? I'm just looking beyond the sidewalk.
Yes, there was a continuous coverage across the
Because,
street.
You know what, I know we're having trouble with people shoveling their sidewalks. And it's like in the business park, they do the same thing. You walk down from one business to the other, you get 12 feet of covered, 4 feet of snow, 12 feet of, like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah,
and
well,
nobody shovels the sidewalk. Because this is, it'll be up to the owners here to shovel those sidewalks, and they'll go, oh, gee, God.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, but we're talking about a space like this, right?
And spaces like that.
Yeah. That's not a big deal. Like it can be continuous.
Okay, that's
We,
good.
uh,
So that can be.
Like it can be done.
Oh,
I mean, we've done it before, but
Yeah, no, and
There's-
I would second that comment, and I think in terms of just the climate, we definitely do deal with a lot more snow days here, and the volume is quite a bit more significant, so that would be advantageous, and likewise with rain, I mean, we have more rain than Vancouver, that's what we're not.
Yeah, can you speak to the apartments themselves?
yeah, the apartments are 1 and 2 bedroom apartments of varying sizes. There.
Numbers?
Numbers, we've got a total of 27, 32, and the split is,
Third of it is 1 bedroom and 2/3 are 2 bedrooms.
2012.
So just, so those who are listening at home, we have 1/3 being 1 bedrooms and 2/3 being 2 bedrooms, 32 total units. Any other questions, council?
Well, it'll be actually just to the planning department or to the rest of council. And, I really like the building, I really like what it looks like, I think it's a stellar looking building, but
We haven't started comments round yet. Hold your thought.
okay,
Thank you.
Can I make just discuss the parking
Sure.
as well? No question, parking downtown is an issue. I mean, we've got complications with being able to do underground parking, and these are all issues that we know very well. The $6,000 for in lieu, which is low by most standards. I think we all understand that. And we're looking for variances on the paid in lieu. So we're not looking to decrease the parking spaces per se, but to still provide 12 paid in lieu spaces, or one option or another to kind of address that. And we kind of got to this place because we took to heart some of the comments that we've been hearing from council, not only on this project but on other projects, about having commercial space on the second floor. And that's something that the client responded to quite quick, quite early on in the process, and said, council seems to want to see commercial on the second floor to ensure our employment lands in Squamish. But the trade-off for that is, commercial space generates a lot more parking spaces required than residential space. So, my initial advice to the client was, if you don't want to go to variances, because we know that council doesn't really want to see variances, especially on parking, then get rid of the commercial on the second, do residential on the second floor, and we don't have a problem. We have the numbers that we need. It's kind of, easy. So, when there's a desire to have commercial on the second floor, not only on this project, but on every other project, as well as the bylaw changes that have been contemplated, there are results that are possibly unintended. For instance, on the commercial floor, yeah, we want to do offices on the second floor, but now we have to provide a whole bunch of parking, and we're already competing heavily with our first floor space for parking space. Especially as Jonas said, on a corner site where we want to have commercial on two sides, we have a lot of competing interests for that first floor space. And at the same time, we're trying to satisfy other desires, commercial on the second floor, which we see as being very important. So that's the kind of the trade-off. We're here ultimately looking for a variance to increase the paid in new spaces because we have provided that commercial space on the second floor.
Anybody else from the audience that would like to speak? Okay. And so I think as we deliberate this, I think what I've heard is that it is this trade-off between, more commercial space and making accommodations to the parking in order to get us to that point, and whether or not we want to entertain that in this scenario. So looking at council in terms of, is there somebody who wants to move recommendation of any sort on this one? Councilor Race.
It's a question on process. So, and through the staff, are these all one issue or all one motion, or could we deal with the DP separately from the variances? Could we deal with each variance separately, or are they together? So is it kind of an all or nothing thing, or is it possible to say yes to some and no to others?
Through you, Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf, I don't think you could approve the DP without the variances because they wouldn't meet the parking requirements that way.
The form and character would likely change if there were no if the variances weren't approved. The form and character would have to probably change. So they're kind of tied together.
I know that we have a parking strategy and a plan, and it's in this year's budget. But some of my discomfort is that we have no plan right now. So I'm hearing, off-site parking and, parking in lieu, but we have no plan. And there's mixed feelings about building a parkade anyway on council. So when are we going to have more clarity around that?
We'll have more clarity around that this year. We are looking at, what if we were to construct a parking structure, and what would that cost? If it can be incorporated with some of the dike upgrades that we're doing. So we are working on a plan, but at this point, yes, we're in that growing stage where things are happening, developments are going up, and we're trying to make plans as we go.
Councilor Pryor.
Somebody kind of told me that the parking structure might cost as much as $10 or $12 million. And I really like this building. I'm just wondering if, and I hate it when it's all or nothing, but can we get a little more out of these guys? I'm not talking about much.
That's something for us to contemplate, I think.
Okay, well,
Staff
just
necessarily.
running the quick numbers, at $6,000 a parking stall, they're paying us 72,000. At 30,000 a parking stall, that's 360,000. So that's our difference in, it's 290,000 difference in what they pay in another town. And that,
So I think maybe what we should do at this point is, we do need to, usually our common practice is to move a motion before we get into the merits of yes or no on the question. So it's moved by Councillor Pryor. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second
second it.
for discussion purposes.
Okay. Councillor Race is seconding. And so, if I may, I'd like to sort of put it into perspective a little bit more deeply. Because in my experience, with the fine grain of development that you see in a central core area, it's almost inevitable that you are going to have variances. And that's just because of the limited footprint and all of the things that you need to include in building. And we could take the position that we're not comfortable with that because it generates too many variances. But we need to recognize what the implications are for that. Then we're looking at consolidation and having super blocks where indeed it would be much easier to achieve all of these objectives in a way that is financially feasible. And I think we also have to take to heart the economic drivers behind this, and that unfortunately in our current real estate market, commercial space does not drive revenues to the point that we make them competitive with residential. So I am, in my view, as I'm considering this, I am seeing this as, an applicant trying to meet us halfway on that, but understanding that definitely there are implications. I do feel somewhat comfortable speaking in favor of this variance, and the reason I do is because, number one, this is a small building. We're talking about 32 units, and it's a corner building. Architecturally, it's very attractive. And we also have to think about what types of spaces are there and who's going to use them. So for example, you think about, especially when you're thinking about commercial parking, usually you're thinking about employees, right? Because they're the ones who are needing the space for the longest. They're there for an 8-hour shift. Whereas customers, it's more of a give and take, right? An hour maximum, that kind of thing. And so in my view, a lot of these uses actually, you think about finer grain, small retail, they don't have high employment intensity, and even the type of employment they have, I don't necessarily feel that it will generate the type of parking requirement that other uses may. So for example, a cornerstone building where you can rent a whole floor plate and pretty high prestige offices versus micro businesses that maybe somebody lives downtown, they can walk to work. Those are some options. So those are all the things that I think about, and I think that it is definitely a bit of a leap, but it is something we need to do. And if we're serious about actually changing the mode shift in our downtown to maintain the character, we need car shares. And this is one way to get us to that point, and actually look at it as a bit of a pilot project to see what kind of results we generate. So I know it's very, very challenging. We hear a lot about parking from the public, absolutely. My own personal view, and I know it's not a popular one, is that a lot of it is driven more by changing perception. I agree. Parking is harder than it was 5 years ago, absolutely. But does it mean we don't have any parking downtown? I don't agree. I mean, every time I drive to council, in the middle of the day, 6 o'clock, I always see at least 4 or 5 spaces. So to me, I don't think we're at that critical phase yet, but we may get there. And I'm gonna sort of leave it at that. But I'm very pleased with this type of development and recognize the challenges that it faces.
Oh, you're picking me next, eh?
I thought I had you on the list, so
Well,
sorry.
Yeah. I'd just like to get a little bit more. it's a beautiful building. It's got a lot of units in it. I mean, our parking regulation, the way it is now, one parking stall per two-bedroom unit. And the rents and the price of everything right now, a two-bedroom unit, hey, will you share a unit with me? Yeah, that'd be great, because that's all people can afford, is sharing units. So that's 2 cars. And if you, when you come into town in the morning, there's cars parked all the way up Loggers Lane to the railroad tracks every morning. All the way down the railroad tracks next to Murrow. There's anywhere between 14 and 25 cars parked illegally on BC Rail property. Our 2 parking lots are full all the time. So, and I know I'm getting up there, and I might see the day when we have rideshare. I would be happy if we got a couple rideshares out of this. I mean, I would really be happy, just something. You know, and so, and totally covered sidewalks, I mean, I really want to see that. So, I mean, that's where I am, and I do like the building. I think it'll be one of the standout buildings in town, but I just think we're not getting enough. That's all.
Okay, Councillor Race next.
Thank you. And I have to admit, I'm a bit conflicted in this. I do like the building. Having said that, I had the same comment about the setback on the 3rd and upper floors on the north side that I had last week with another proponent. And this is not the proponent's fault. I think this is us to think about how that might work, because if there's a similar building that goes up on the next lot to the north, you end up with 2 apartments looking into each other 10 feet apart, and I'm not sure that we're creating happy living spaces by doing that. And so we may have to rethink these setbacks and whether they should be greater in return for something else. However, we are dealing with the legislation we have. This complies with it in that respect. And so I'm not taking issue with it at this point. It's more of a gratuitous comment. I don't have issue with the variance for the loading zone. You know, the types of businesses that are likely to go in there would likely be serviced with smaller trucks, vans, etc. And we do have a precedent. We did allow that, if I recall correctly, with the main structure on Cleveland Avenue for that reason. So I don't have an issue with that variance. I'm not happy with the idea of taking the cash in lieu and putting it towards electric charging units. I think the developer should think about whether or not the building would be more attractive if it had electric charging units in there for a relatively modest cost, given the way our society is headed. And it might be the kind of thing that they would want to put in there anyway to make the building more marketable. I would rather take the money. $6,000, I think we'd all agree in this room, is low. And is a number that we as a council, I think, have to take responsibility for that. Once again, that's not the proponent's fault. And I don't think we can try and twist their arm at this stage of the development process to extract something else from them. But I do have an issue with the variances, with the commercial properties. I take it that we cannot force the proponent to put commercial on the 2nd floor at this stage. The bylaw that we have and the report calls for it, or indicates that this is voluntary on the part of the proponent. It is kind of pending legislation, if you like, elsewhere. It hasn't finalized yet. This property was rezoned some time ago, so it would not apply here. So that's a voluntary thing. So I think our decision as a council is, okay, we appreciate that, and the trade-off is we have to get a parking variance. That 2nd floor space would be office space, almost certainly. That's people generally working there all day. They're surrounded by 2-hour parking on the street, and if there's no parking in the building, that's where they'd have to park. It's going to be some ways away, and so I'm not sure. That means it's going to be in front of somebody's house on 3rd or 4th Avenue. So I'm not sure that's desirable. I know that we want to encourage 2nd floor commercial for office space, and we certainly have taken steps to do that on Cleveland Avenue. But I think, you know, this for me is a balance, and I'm not prepared to add to the parking problem here, so I am not supporting that variance, and therefore will be voting against the motion.
That's what I like.
I like the building. I'm glad the proponent has offered to put second floor office in. I know that many large cities are starting to do away with their parking minimums for commercial space, because cities are looking at encouraging mode share. But those big cities also have all the other pieces in place. Regular transit, car share, active transportation, all those things are there to support moving away from providing lots and lots of parking. The problem is we're not there. And my issue on I agree with Doug, I don't mind the loading zone variance, although I think it should have a time on it. It shouldn't be an all day, so we can't sacrifice a stall all day. But to do away with every single commercial spot within the building is, I would not have a problem if we had a plan, if we had all those other pieces in place, if our cash in lieu was higher, if we knew where we were gonna put parking, but we don't have those pieces in place. And, you know, it should light a fire under this council to move those things up on the agenda, so that we can look at developments like this and see a way forward. I don't know whether there's an ability to reduce some of the second floor office, put in another residential unit or two, and provide some commercial parking, but without having other solutions, without being able to answer those questions, where are these people supposed to go, I can't support that large variance in the parking.
Any other thoughts from council before we vote?
I'm of a similar mind. I think for me, the parking is one of the biggest issues. It's a great looking building. I understand that you've tried to sort of walk middle ground from what you've heard, from what council wants as far as commercial space and residential combined and on the ground floor. But I agree with Doug's sentiment about, you know, people that are gonna work in the building, where are they gonna park? And I think what it's gonna do is just push people out into the outlying areas and force them to park either illegally or in residential neighborhoods. So I really can't support it with the parking conditions that we have right now.
Okay. All right, and so I think what we'll do, we're ready to vote almost, and I'm just gonna say that, you know, I see the way that it's going, and I ask everybody to remember, when people said that, you know, bringing forward these kinds of things around mode share in Vancouver, it was very controversial 10, 15 years ago when they said, oh, no new car capacity. People said, oh, how are you gonna get there? How are you gonna get Vancouver now has 50-50 split in terms of their downtown mode share, active transportation versus automobiles, and they got there because they actually were very, very specific about shaping development in a different way. And I actually believe that we already do have a lot of things going for us. We have a very active community in terms of cycling. We also have a huge residential population coming up around our downtown, and our transit is actually pretty good for the 9 to 5 commute. It's actually quite good. There's not a problem for that, so that's why I wasn't that concerned about the offices. But that's okay. I appreciate all the comments, and I know we've got a lot more work to do around policy so that we're getting a little bit more clarity for applicants before they come. That's okay.
Yeah, thank you. And just to something that Acting Mayor Gleason said, about 1 car share equaled 5 parking stalls. Right, did you say that? Yeah. And that kind of could be an innovative way of getting some extra parking. And it's a nice building, I wanna see it there.
I mean, so this, the number that we've found to facilitate car share is 55 to 75,000, and so that would provide at least two vehicles to start a car share in Squamish. So it is addressing that, and looking into the future, we see that the parking requirements are probably going to keep going down. We're building today for the future. This building is going to be around for the next 100 years. people are going to bike here. The people that work here are gonna either live downtown, if there's no parking, and there's no free parking downtown, they're gonna have to take other choices to get to work. I think in a way, we have to create the constraints for the habits to change. And so that's what this proposal is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love this conversation. So if this doesn't pass at this moment, the proponent might go away and come back with some car share ideas?
No, the car share idea is already in place. If
No,
these,
but I'd like a couple car shares, it's not just the idea.
yeah, we would be taking this money, the cash and money, which is low, but it would be enough
Yeah,
to potentially start a car share with one of the car share companies from Vancouver,
yeah.
which would start with at least two car share cars. That would be located on, not in a building, would be in a visible area somewhere downtown.
So in my whole conversation, I'd like to get a little bit more. I mean, you've heard that. So if it doesn't go through, I like car shares.
So just to clarify, I think the CEO wants to clarify.
I'm not sure if it's needed now, but the car share would be a district initiative, so using cash in lieu versus having a proponent put car share in the building. So the proposal from staff is to take the cash in lieu, 72,000, and look into the feasibility of a district-led car share somewhere in the district, as
And
opposed to it being tied specifically to this building.
And just to confirm, my understanding is that actually what we're voting on right now is the car share option, because that is the staff recommendation. The applicant did make an offer around the electric cars, but staff came back and said, no, we just want the money so that we can do a car share, and that's what actually the motion is. Am I correct in saying that, staff?
That's correct, because the research that we've done, we know that the car share, in order to start it in a place that doesn't have one, you have to put them in visible places. You can't put them in buildings that are privately owned.
So I'm good with that, it's just not enough money.
But it's enough money it's potentially enough money to start a car share.
Well, you heard what I said.
All right, folks, I don't have more to add. Does anybody else have any more to add? Councilor Elliott.
I'll just build on your comments, and I appreciate it. I am all for mode share, and we do that in our family. But this isn't all or nothing proposition, and it's not a transition proposal. It's like we're there. We're just gonna eliminate parking, but the other pieces aren't all in place yet. I know they're coming, and we'll get there. But this didn't even try and get part of the way there. Like, here's 4 commercial stalls, and if you want them, you gotta pay for them. I don't know what it is, but it's just nothing. And I think that's the issue that I have with it. I don't mind variances for less, but having none is at this time in this place. I'm not sure we're all the way there, and I recognize it's a corner lot. I like everything else about this building, but we're going to add to a problem in the short term that we don't have solutions for or the money to solve in the short term.
And I'll go to the staff here just for clarity on process. So if I understand correctly, that it's been moved and seconded that we accept the staff recommendation. Now, if that motion fails, it is possible for a member of council to move the alternate recommendation. Is that true? Correct. Okay. Just want to make that clear for everybody so that we know what the next steps are. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of the staff recommendation, which is to grant the variances subject to the staff recommendation. All those opposed? Councillor Kent, Pryor, Elliott, and Race against. Motion fails.
So on the other motion.
Okay, Councillor Race.
Thank you. So I'll move the alternate, that the council not authorize development permit number 443 and refer it back to staff.
Do we have a seconder? Kent? Councillor Kent? All right. Any discussion?
Well, I think I made myself clear.
Staff has heard about some of the different recommendations and suggestions. So if nobody else wants to add anything, we'll vote on that. All All those in favor? Opposed? Passes five oh. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Very close. All right, so moving along to the next item, we have item 8A1. First three readings, District of Squamish Remuneration and Expenses Bylaw Number 1503, 1997, Amendment Bylaw Number 2542. Over to Sam.
Good afternoon, Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf, Council. The report to Council that's before you today is outlining an amendment to the Remuneration and Expenses Bylaw. And if I can take Council back to the various budget discussions that happened through 2016 and 2017, part of the process included discussions about the Mayor and Council remuneration. On January 10th, in that discussion and the report that was part of the January 10th discussion, it outlined a 7.5% discrepancy between the cohort of similar municipalities with full-time mayors. So the District of Squamish mayor was paid 7.5% less than that cohort. The financial plan discussion continued, various budget discussions and deliberations continued, and through those budget discussions, the council had included an increase in the remuneration for the mayor, based generally on that 7.5%. The financial plan approved, but without a bylaw change for the mayor and council remuneration. So today, I'm before you with a staff recommendation for the change to the bylaw. The one of the discrepancies or gaps that was in place was that the budget development did not include the acting mayor compensation. So there's a slight variance there. There's two options in the report to council in front of you. The first option outlines the change in the remuneration that fits within the budget that was approved within the financial plan. And the numbers that you see in there include some proration, so that if that were the option that council chose, part of the remuneration would be based on the 2016 rate and part on 2017. Staff are recommending option 2, as that process is consistent with processes for exempt employees and processes in place for mayor and council with regards to changes to benefits, et cetera. So there is consistency there, and it does tie with the discussion that happened throughout the budget deliberation. And so staff are recommending option 2, which has the remuneration change effective January 1st, 2017, and is outlined in bylaw number 2542, which amends bylaw 1503. And open to questions. The information is in the report.
Councilor Adler.
Mr. Sim, sorry if I missed this. Why is there a difference in council remuneration between option 1 and 2?
It's for the amount prorated through the acting mayor from the portion prior to May 1st.
Oh, right. You've
Is
already
that
done an acting mayor
2016?
stint. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, we have a mover. Moved by Councilor Grace
With option 2.
with option 2. Is there a seconder? I'll second that. Discussion?
I'll speak on it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I will support this. I remember the budget discussion, and in the past, I've taken a bit of a hard view of budget increases for, or salary increases for council. But this is quite modest. It is supported by getting us to an average of other communities, like communities. I'm supporting staff's recommendation for option 2 because, first of all, it is consistent with our practice in the past and how we treat other employees. And the decision actually to raise it was made back in January, and it's just now that we're kind of catching up with the process, as Mr. Singh noted. So I think for those reasons, I'm prepared to support option 2.
Councillor Elliott.
I was kind of hoping that this would come to us in the different motions for the mayor's salary and the councilor's salary, because I certainly supported the mayor's change in salary, but didn't think that councilors needed that 3.5% lift. So I'll support it because I want the mayor to have that change, but I'm still not supportive of a lift for the council's salary.
Does staff want to explain the reasoning behind that?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Blackman-Wolf. The way the bylaw is established, and so that would require a change, is that councillors are remunerated at 43% of the mayor's remuneration, and then the acting mayor, the compensation for acting mayor is based also along that. So, and that's where some of the gap in the numbers initially at the discussion, that portion wasn't factored in. But I think that it's been consistent, and perhaps other staff who have been here longer would be able to outline that, but I think it's been consistently the place that that 43% has been the difference between council remuneration and the mayor remuneration.
Any other councillors on this? And I'll, just for the record, I know we had discussed this before in the committee meetings and finance stuff, but just since we're in a regular meeting, I expressed support for both of the increases, and the reason I did is because I have a sense that the workload has evolved over the last 3 years, and I don't see any signs of it actually slowing down, and I think it is important that we make sure that remuneration on the mayor's end is reflective of the full-time position that it is, and then secondly that that councillors also have the necessary remuneration so that people from all walks of life, if they do need to carry on a second job, are able to manage their time accordingly. So I think, and again, getting back to the modest size of it, I agree with Councillor Race that I think it's appropriate because we did do a review on that. So it's very much in line with comparable municipalities. So, and I think, as the mayor would probably say if she's here, this is always one of the most awkward things because you're voting on your way, your own wage, but it is one thing that we do need to do, and the public has its say in terms of election. All of that. We'll vote on the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I thought if I opposed, I could get the front page of the newspaper.
Probably good. So we're going on to item 2, 8A2, which is District of Squamish Noise Regulation Bylaw number 2312, 2014, amendment bylaw 2541.
Acting Mayor Blackman-Wolf, Council, Mr. Rick Farina, the Manager for Bylaw Enforcement and Animal Control, joins me at the table today to talk about the next 2 items, and both of those have had some discussion at various points by Council, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Farina.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Based on a Council resolution, staff were directed to amend the noise bylaw relating to construction noise weekdays and Sunday. As a result of that direction, staff met to review the bylaw and prepare the necessary reports. As part of the review process, staff noted that the resolution and discussion by council was silent regarding hours for noise resulting from construction activity on statutory holidays. Currently, the bylaw allows for noise from construction activity on statutory holidays, the same as any weekend day, so that's before 8 a.m. or after 7 p.m. As indicated in the report before council, staff are recommending that the amended bylaw with statutory holidays following the same hours as the new Sunday hours. If approved by council, there would be no permitted construction noise on weekdays before 7 o'clock a.m. or after 8 o'clock p.m. On Sundays and statutory holidays before 10 a.m. or after 4 p.m. Saturdays would remain unchanged before 8 a.m. or after 7 p.m. I welcome any questions if there are any.
That's okay.
So given the 7 a.m. Start time, is it permissible then to have anyone on site at all, i.e., for instance, trucks lined up in front of the site idling? For instance, people on the site preparing for trucks to come on or preparing the site in order for work to begin prior to 7 o'clock?
I think we would be looking at the actual construction activity as opposed to preparation for construction activity.
Even if those preparations were noisy ones?
I think that that's something that we could, discuss at length. But generally speaking, it's the actual activity of creating the noise as a result of what it is they're trying to do. So if they're trying to, build a wall, then it's the noise as a result of them trying to build the wall, not gathering the wood or having deliveries and that sort of thing. So generally speaking.
I won't get site specific, but I have had some constituents mention to me that there's, again, I won't get site specific, but preparing, i.e. taking heavy machinery off of flatbed trailers and off of trucks and unloading materials prior to that 7 a.m. start time, which just causing considerable noise in some of those neighborhoods. And so just trying to address that particular item. So they're not actually on the site constructing it, they haven't gone into the buildings to work or any of that, but they're prepping everything, and some of that noise is quite substantial.
I agree, we have had those issues in the past, but generally speaking, the noise bylaw speaks to the construction noise itself of the actual act of constructing.
It's a bit of a gray area then.
We have had some issues.
And just on that, before I go to Council Pryor, do we have a district-wide anti-idling bylaw?
We do.
And would it apply in a circumstance of that nature? So
Yes,
is there
it
a bunch of heavy vehicles idling excessively?
Absolutely it would.
Okay. So for those listening at home, remember, we have an anti-idling bylaw. If you see idling in your neighborhood, it doesn't matter the time of day. Please report that. Councilor Craig.
Yeah, thanks. And of course, bylaw infractions are all driven by complaints, really, aren't they?
Some are reactive and some are proactive,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, we're complaint driven.
Yeah. If somebody's starting at 6:30 instead of 7 every morning and someone phones, you're gonna be out there to talk to people. If nobody phones,
It's very difficult to understand where the issues are occurring. I mean, the district is quite large.
that's right.
So it is, for the most part, we're hoping that the public will be calling in and identifying
If
those
it's a
sites and
problem.
those issues.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Councilor Race.
Well, it's not a question, it's a comment, actually, and with respect, I think if our bylaw is not clear on what constitutes construction, we might consider clarifying it, to Councilor Kent's point, because for me, the delivery of materials like lumber, loads, and things like that is part of a construction process. And it's not the actual fabrication of a wall or the hammering of a nail, but it's kind of taking total as part of the construction process. As well as cleanup of the site, people make a lot of noise just cleaning up their tools as well. So I think, maybe if our definition is too restrictive, we might consider widening the definition, because noise is noise. This is a noise bylaw, not an anti-construction bylaw. And whatever is generating noise at that site before 7 and after 8 is something that's a concern.
Acting Mayor Blackman-Wolf, through you. Just to touch on a couple of points, and I see Mr. Farina is having a quick scan of the noise bylaw as well, so I'll give him a chance to perhaps look at the definition, but certainly our bylaw enforcement are, one of the key components is being complaint driven, and of course we look for voluntary compliance, but it's not always complaint driven, but it is important that we receive those complaints so we know what the specifics are and that we can then review what the definitions are in the bylaw, so we can really work with the folks that are doing the construction to educate them about what is allowed and what isn't allowed, including the anti-idling that's found under the traffic bylaw, so that everybody fits within that good neighbor guideline. And that's one of our goals here as well, is that you know, when the changes to the bylaw, should those be approved by council, that we'll have that up on there's a spot on our website called the Builder's Corner. And we can also help to educate the builders about some of those good neighbor aspects, in that don't have your truck idling, you know, out in front of the construction site, regardless of whether or not it's actually contrary to the bylaw, one of the bylaws. Did you have a chance to look?
I've had a quick peek at the noise bylaw. It speaks a little bit more in depth in general noise, but with construction noise, it's a little less clear.
So we can review that also.
Identified, and some of the things that I'm reading here that it may apply in some of these circumstances. It says, construction noise means any noise, sound, or vibration made on or associated with a construction site. A, in carrying on work in connection with construction, reconstruction, alteration, repair, or demolition of any building, structure, or thing. B, in carrying on any excavation, filling, or other operation. Or C, in moving or operating any machine, engine, or equipment. So those are the three headings under our current noise bylaw. This is the original 2014 bylaw. But again, fairly wide, but again, one could see how, you know, maybe idling would be more of a gray area, and how you figure that out. So, any other questions, comments?
Move the staff recommendation.
Seconded by
Second reading.
Councillor Kent. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Item 3, District of Squamish Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw number 2418, 2015, Amendment Bylaw number 2504, 2016.
Hopefully, this is a little clearer. In December 2015, the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw was adopted. A key piece to the adjudication process is the screening officer. Previously, council designated the manager of legislative services, a legislative assistant, and an independent contractor as screening officers. As indicated in the report to council, staff have identified a need for an additional position to be added. Staff are recommending that the bylaw adjudication clerk be added to the role of screening officer. I welcome any questions if there are any.
Council? Councillor Elliott.
Mr. Freeman, does this mean by the end of June, we can actually issue tickets? We've done our education, we can actually give up on?
We are ready. We are ready to go. It's been a long process, many years. We're interviewing right now for the position, and we're prepared to move forward likely on the 28th of June.
Excellent. Good news, yeah, and definitely something that's super important in a growing community where there's more competition for space and people living in closer quarters, so. Mover. Moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Pryor. And we'll let Ms. Stefan.
Well, I know the last time I read this, bylaw doesn't have the right to come into your house, do they?
without warrant,
Yeah,
we would seek a warrant.
yeah,
Nervous?
okay. No, I just remember last time when we were talking about it, that it gave bylaw, there was talk of bylaw having the authority to just come in and say, I want to inspect your place, and we're coming in. And so I didn't like that.
There are
Warrants
some,
are fine. I mean,
there are
just-
some provisions, but we would seek a warrant, an entry warrant.
So, Acting Mayor, or through you, Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf, what's before you today is certainly not about expanding the authorities of our bylaw enforcement officers. What it's about is establishing in the bylaw the position that council approved of the bylaw adjudication clerk as the screening officer, and that will be one of that individual's key roles. And that, as Councillor Elliott has mentioned, that will allow us to move forward with the bylaw notification process, and with a strong tentative date of June 28th, that we're having some discussion with our friends in finance about if that is as practical as possible given the tax rate or the
Tax collection.
tax collection for July 4th, and so we're wanting to make sure we're not negatively impacting on those folks. But what this also means is it's a real improvement, I think, for the community, because it gives so many options for individuals in that if they receive a ticket, there's an opportunity for them to have that process adjudicated in a much more streamlined process. So I think there's many benefits which council are well aware of and I won't go into, but just wanted to highlight a couple of those
Yeah,
points.
and that's how I perceive it as well, as a little bit more efficient government, and also though better enforcement, more efficient enforcement. Really.
Yeah, and it's just, I think this is a great direction to go in, and I'm still highly supportive of our educate first and ticket second. I didn't want to fly on that question. Yes, let's ticket everybody. But I know that education sometimes can only go so far, and I still get complaints around some of the parking downtown and staff parking in front of businesses that require turnover. And they see the same cars there day in, day out. And so there is a time when education's gone far enough and people need a stronger message. So I think this is an efficient way to take care of that for our community as it grows. So thanks for bringing it forward.
All right, we're ready to vote on this. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf, if I can
Yeah.
just make one more comment. It's somewhat related to this, but over the next few weeks of council meetings, you'll be seeing Mr. Farina a few more times. And so, for example, next week we'll be talking about bylaw enforcement policy, which Councillor Elliott refers to many of the aspects that you've outlined. So just, I know that will be coming forward, and just wanted to highlight that there's a number of activities underway, including working with the Business Improvement Organization for parking strategy and parking enforcement strategy. So all of that's underway.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Next item on the agenda, item 4. Temporary borrowing for arena slab replacement bylaw number 2543 from 17.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf. My name is Christine Matthews. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the district. With your leave, I'll talk to the next 3 bylaws, if that's all right.
Yeah,
Just,
excellent.
try and speed along for you.
Yeah.
The next 3 bylaws are temporary borrowing bylaws, requiring 3 readings this evening. The bylaw 2543, 2544, and 2545 provide temporary borrowing for us to construction finance the arena slab, the TTP project, and fire hall seismic upgrades. All in, the bylaws request that we temporarily borrow up to 3.6, just over 3.6 million, almost $3.7 million worth. Today, we would need to borrow about 1.8 of that. And that, the 1.8 would equate to about $24,343 $3 per year in debt service. Probably just a little bit confusing in the report, it indicates that the TTP project actually has $334,500 worth of expenditures to date, but there were other funding sources for that project, so there was accumulated surplus and a fleet component to that, so that's why the discrepancy in those numbers. And unless there's further questions?
Councillor Elliott.
So maybe this is a question for another staff member, but the arena's left.
It is almost done, yes. We've spent 1.2 and there's just a little residual moving into the current year. So just some final, and it just happened because we were cutting off this borrowing as of 2016. So yes, I believe it's done, but there would have been some spending in 2017 as well. So that's why we're going for additional borrowing, so that we can also borrow in the current year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'll move the motion, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving all three, or
Did you move
That
all
was
three?
for
or-
all three, yeah.
You have to move.
I'll move second.
Okay. That was the first one. Okay. Yeah, I got caught up in the efficiency of the moment.
Sorry, I led you astray.
So that was the arena slide replacement. Now we're voting on the technical transformation project, TTP project. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, we have the borrowing for Techless Fire Hall seismic upgrade. Mover for that, Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. All right, so now moving on to item 9A1.
Hold on, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, I just emailed him.
Okay, so we're gonna
Sing something, Jason.
oh. Jeopardy music.
I will go with.
See, we are too efficient. Oh, we have a question from the audience. Please come up to the microphone, miss.
Going back to the council remuneration, where's the extra, the variance?
The variance was because we backdated it to January 1st as opposed to going to starting at April.
But where does that,
Where is it funded from?
Where's it funded from? Oh,
Yeah.
that's the question for this. We'll let her
Oh, yeah.
question herself for a second.
I think a good news
Thank you,
topic.
Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf. So there is generally some contingency left by the end of the year. And also, we do some benefit percentage loading when we do salaries, and that's basically an estimate. So we believe the $5,000 will likely be recovered within the operating dollar cost of the budget.
So no revisions to the budget necessary.
Not for such a small amount. We're quite sure that there'll be something somewhere with vacancies or something in staff that would cover that amount.
Good question.
It's like finance night.
That's right. So we're item 2, borrowing approval for fall 2017 municipal finance authority debt issue.
Thank you again. Acting Mayor Blackman Wolf. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it?
Sorry.
And again, it's Christine Matthews, Chief Financial Officer. Very quickly, this is we're requesting council pass 3 municipal security issuing resolutions for the fall borrowing season to go to long-term debt. The projects we're going to long-term borrowing on are the Cleveland Avenue, forestry building roof, fire rescue truck, and the water mains. We're going for amortization periods of 15 years, except for the fire rescue truck, which we're going for 10. And the total expected impact on debt service per year from a property tax perspective is $72,463. And that's estimated right now because it'll depend on the rates we get at the time. And then the water mains, we're looking at about 41,801 debt service per year, and that would be coming from utility fees and revenues. If there's no other questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. So, seeing that, I think we can do all three of these at the same. Because it's one staff recommendation and there's three resolutions. Does it matter?
I don't think it matters
I think it's
to,
fine.
Okay, so this time we're going for all three, we are gonna be efficient. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Alright, so we've got correspondence, 10A1. And this is the section where we have correspondence where we have a specific action being requested. Does anybody want to speak on this? I know the recommended resolution is that we refer the correspondence to staff to prepare a response. This was around short-term rental properties. Do you have any comments or questions before we send it off to staff? Councillor Elliott.
I'm sympathetic to the person writing the letter. Certainly our strata is grappling with what to do with short-term rentals. And so it's an issue that will need to be addressed. And I think each strata's got to do what it feels creates the community that works best for them in the short term until there's more regulations around it in our community. I mean, right now we know that they're not allowed, and that's where our strata started from. So, but it is a challenge. We'll have to look at it one day for sure.
It's definitely an emerging issue, and yeah, hopefully stratas will be able to figure that out, and we will respond accordingly. Any other questions or comments? All right, do we have a mover or seconder for that one? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, in the rest of the correspondence, do we have any letters that council wants pulled? Go through a list of them, and if not, we'll move for information on all of them. Yeah, Councillor Elliott.
Number 6, which is from the Chair of the Board of Education, Rick Price. And I know there was some discussion about this, and this is about the vape store that is proposed as applied for a business license. And I'm just wondering, for the record, whether we actually have any jurisdiction to not allow a business license in certain locations?
I can speak to that. It falls under an allowed use as a retail store. And at this point, when the application has come in for a business license, there's nothing the district could do to prevent it from getting a business license and opening its doors.
Are we clear yet on, having this as an excluded use, into some other uses that, very limited that, we could put in our business bylaw or our zoning bylaw?
Probably both. It could be addressed in the same fashion as a dispensary.
Because I do recall, like when I was at FCM, I did have a meeting with the Harvest Rare Foundation, and that was one of their concerns was the emergence of vaping stores, and that sort of in a very unregulated fashion, and that municipalities need to start actually taking a bit of a lead in the absence of other jurisdictions. So I don't know, maybe we might be interested in taking a look at that when the opportunity arises. I don't know. Do we think that, when do we anticipate sort of the next opportunity, I guess? So maybe we have some suggestions from council here. Councilor Elliott, Councilor Hicks?
I'm certainly supportive of trying to apply the same rules as we did to dispensaries around schools and youth-oriented facilities, and when the opportunity arises.
Councilor Race?
Yeah, I agree, and I think I was going to suggest that it go on the agenda of Community Development Committee for discussion. That's chaired by the mayor, who is not here tonight, but I'll leave it to staff to perhaps suggest that being put on the agenda for the upcoming meeting.
Great. Excellent. Any other letters to be pulled? All right. So we'll just move reception. Receipt. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Approval of minutes. I think what we'll do, if it's all right with everybody here, if we could go for approval of the minutes of June 6th, both special and regular business meeting, as well as the special business meeting of June 9th. Those all together. The mover for those minutes. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And then we have committee of the whole from June 13th, and special business meeting June 13th. Mover seconder, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Okay, so moving on down now, we have some recommended motions that have come from committee of the whole on June 13th.
Did you do the special June 13th?
Yes, yeah, we did. That was
Otherwise,
sorry. Request for support of the District of Squamish for request to rename Mount Garibaldi to its original Coast Salish name. Yeah, so somebody who's present at the meeting pronounce that for me. Chikai. Is there a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, Municipal Finance Authority Survey, Socially Responsible Investing. And this is that that the Chief Financial Officer be appointed to carry out the MFA survey on socially responsible investing on behalf of the district. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by myself. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Regional Growth Strategy, Major Amendment Notice. This one is that the district provide a letter of support to the SLRD with respect to the following proposed major amendment process for RGS, law number 1514, and advise that at this time, the District of Squamish has no further comments on the proposed amendments to focus development into compact, complete, sustainable communities as contained in the SLRD's proposed bylaw. A mover for that one? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, business arising from minutes. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, so from the minutes on June 6th, and this is where Edith Coe from for the Squamish River Watershed Society spoke about the salmon enhancement program being cut by DFO. And they were very quickly reinstated, thanks to a lot of advocacy on the part of many BC MPs, including ours, Pamela Bolton-Jones. One of the things that I'd like to propose is that the mayor write a letter to Minister LeBlanc to thank him for listening to his constituents and his colleagues and for putting those programs back in place and just emphasizing again how important they are to communities like this.
I'll move that second.
Second.
Okay.
Councillor Elliott, motion.
You move it? Okay.
I was moving, that we write a letter to
Okay.
Minister LeBlanc.
Got it. Perfect.
Sorry, who's that?
Second.
Yeah, second by Councillor Race. My bad. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Yeah, it is always good to send messages of support when things change in the favorable, not just things are going backward. Okay, moving on to our minutes from our committees. Community Development Standing Committee, June 6th. Move approval of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by myself. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the Public Arts Select Committee, June 7th. Move approval of the minutes. I'll move those. Seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. And coming out of that committee, there was a recommendation that $400 from the public art budget be allocated to incorporate the Friends design into an existing zebra-style crosswalk near Crocodile Elementary School. Sounds good to me.
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Always great when we can do creative things like that. Stan Clark Park Mosaic, that $1,000, up to $1,000 be allocated from the public art budget to engage a professional mosaicist, first time I've ever said that, to provide advice to the committee on the state of the Stan Clark Park Mosaic. Everybody okay with that? Got a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor?
It's our council's money if that's the way they want to spend it.
Well, I think, my view on it is that, we leave it to the experts on the public art stuff. I trust their judgment myself, but. Councillor?
And I vote for this just to satisfy my curiosity. I've never heard of a mosaicist before, so see what they look like.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Finally, we have the Clark Guildford Watershed Public Art, that up to $500 from the public art budget be allocated to the Squamish Arts Council for the public art application at the Guildford Watershed. This is discussed at the June 7th Public Art Select Committee meeting. Not to be confused with the watershed of another sort. Mover? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Okay, and then moving on to the next item, we do have council staff in-camera item announcements. We are announcing a new appointment to the Board of Variance, and we voted to support that Drew Norcom be appointed to the Board of Variance for a 3-year term ending June 1st, 2020. We're very pleased with the amount and quality of applications we received, and it's a very difficult choice, but yeah, we look forward to a new member. Okay. Open question period. Any? Oh,
Oh, it says staff,
that was
council announcements up next.
yeah. That was just the in-camera ones. We already called for unscheduled public attendance, and there was none. Open question period. Any questions from our dedicated audience? Thank you. Council or staff announcements? Councilor Pryor.
Yeah, thanks. On Thursday, there's a Ron Anderson alternate. And I don't know if we can send a letter or something, but, we all know Ron, and I'm so happy to see that there's going to be a golf tournament in his name. So it's Thursday, and someone in the audience could talk to it if she wants. Ally?
Sorry?
Would you like to speak to it? Well, you know more about the particulars than I do.
He's talking about the Ron Anders.
Ron Anderson.
It's a chamber, Scottish Chamber of Commerce in that, you know that, right?
I guess so, but I
Yeah.
just don't.
Okay, well,
I'm technically a member of the Chamber of Commerce. It's on Thursday. It starts at 1 p.m. is registration, and yeah, it's in his name. It's a memorial tournament this year. The shotgun starts at 3 p.m. and I think you can buy tickets separately for like if you just want to go to the dinner if you're not a golfer and you just want to like come support the event. You can come. I think it's at 6 or 6:30 p.m. So if you're interested in doing that, yeah, it's good.
So Councilor Pryor will be there. If you'd like to join
I tried to
him.
be there for the dinner, yeah.
And on the letter, I think we could totally do a greeting letter of some sort that you can take along with you. And
Well, we could
I
put
can
it on.
sign it on behalf of council as
Yeah.
acting mayor and
Thanks,
that.
thanks, Ally.
I think we need a motion for that. All right. Any other council staff announcements? Councilor Elliott.
So 2 upcoming fun and important events happening at Fordham Hall. So tomorrow is National Aboriginal Day, and there's events at Fordham Hall from noon till 4 p.m. And I'm quite excited to hear that different school classes are attending. So the event hopefully is growing every year. And then also because we don't have another business meeting before Canada Day, there's a multicultural event taking place at Totem Hall on Canada Day in recognition of the fact that this nation was built over many thousands of years, not 150 years, by people, by our First Nations, and then by people that came to this country from other countries. So I think it'll be a great event to acknowledge our whole history, not just the last 150 years.
Yes, thanks for mentioning that, and I'm happy that I am going to be able to attend tomorrow to the Aboriginal Day celebrations on behalf of council, and be sure to share with members in the nation our support. And just on the side note, I know that there has been discussions about making National Aboriginal Day a statutory holiday. I think that's something that we should consider, because quite often some of us get caught out on other events that preclude us from attending. This is a serious consideration. So think about that next time you talk to your federal member of parliament. Any other announcements?
I just wanted to mention that I attended the Spockbush Bike Race, the Spockbush 50, on the weekend, and it was a really well-run and well-organized event. They had a lot of riders, and everybody really seemed to be enjoying themselves. It's nice to see something come along and kind of fill the void that we had with the Test of Metal leaving. And from what I could see, everybody was really excited to have something that they could go out and sort of make Squamish's brand as far as bike riding come back to life. So well done. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know, and I agree too, and I think it's just so key to our brand and our identity, and in terms of people's lived experience in Squamish, that it's so exciting to see people coming up with that, and looking forward to the future on that. Anybody else? All right, well, everybody knows what that means. We can have a mover for termination of leave. Moved by Councilor Rice, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.